the more we're not afraid to talk about our blindness and visual impairments and be truly open with it, I truly think we're going to make the process better for the person that's going to come behind us. The more we talk about it, people will understand that, hey, blindness is not so misunderstood as I thought. I can adapt to it. I can include someone with blindness or visual impairment in my classroom or in my store or in my business or in my employment. And it's going to be a great experience. But until we start facing that and having those conversations, we've got a lot of work left to do.
Stephanie Jones, welcome to the See-Through podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. I have like a long list to go over with you. In fact, we were chatting before we pressed record and you gave me a bunch of new topics to talk about even. So yeah, let's just dive in. Let's just get going. Let's just not waste anyone's time, you know?
Let's go for it.
Yeah. So I like to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to anyone who's new or unfamiliar. Would you mind giving a quick little intro?
So my name is Stephanie Jones, and I am the VP of Marketing for a company named Menus for All. And we released our first iOS app in November of 2022. And it provides access to 1 million accessible restaurant menus throughout the United States and Canada.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a lot of people.
It is.
And then in regards to yourself, you are blind yourself, correct?
I am. I lost my own sight 17 years ago when I have a condition called pseudotumor cerebri, and it caused pressure to build on my optic nerves. And so that's how I entered the blind and visually impaired community all those years ago.
Has your vision changed at all in those 17 years, or has it basically stayed the same and you've adapted to it? Or have you had to adapt to it as the years go on?
So when I first lost my sight in 2006, I was right at 2400, which meant that I still had light perception, could still see colors. A lot of times I could use large print. I started using a screen reader, started learning how to read Braille. But in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe I don't need all of this because I still had enough sight where I didn't have to use my cane and I could kind of fake it until I made it to wherever I was going. But as my condition progressed, I started losing more of the sight. And so there came times when I had to recognize, wait a minute, I don't have the sight that I thought I had, and that's not what I need to rely on, and I've got to rely on the skills that I've been learning in order to be independent. I did some stupid things, to say the least, that made me think, you know what? That wouldn't have happened if I had done things the right way the first time out and just trusted the skill set versus the sight. And so now my sight's to a point where I have no light perception on my left side, and in my right eye, I have less than 5% remaining. So shadows, I can tell sometimes if something may have moved, but I won't know what it is. I don't do colors or faces anymore, but I can tell sometimes contrast. So everything light to me must be white, and everything dark must be black. So there are times when I can kind of tell those things, but other than that, so now I am a screen reader user. I teach Braille. I don't really read it for pleasure like I used to anymore because I have neuropathy in my hands, but it is something that I strongly advocate for and want people to use and learn and to understand. And so that's where I am now visually.
Yeah, that's always good to know because I feel like people listening, the whole, blindness is such a spectrum.
Yes.
So it's hard to know, sometimes someone needs a little bit more info to know exactly where you are in that spectrum.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. You said you did some stupid things. I got curious when you said that. Do you mind kind of explaining some of those stupid things you did?
So there's two really big moments that kind of come to mind. The first was I thought I could trick my orientation and mobility instructor when I was learning to use my cane when it came to crossing the street. So instead of completely listening and relying on my hearing to know when the surge of traffic was, I thought, well, I can sometimes catch the color or the movement of the cars if they were dark. Well, this particular time, I didn't see that it was a light colored car. And I went to step out thinking I was clear. And she had to
Mm-hmm.
snatch me back because I had missed that the car was there. So that was the
Yeah.
first really bad one I made. And then the other one was I was heating up some creamed potatoes
Okay.
and I had
Sounds
poured
good.
some milk in there and I didn't pay attention to listen whether or not the pot was starting to bubble. And I decided, oh, well, let me stick my face down toward the pot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm already feeling it. Oh, I don't even want you to finish this one.
Yeah, to see
Oh.
if I could see that the pot was boiling. And of course, it started popping up into my face. So I learned the
Mm.
hard way. And I share these things because I want people not to do what I did, and I want them to be better than what I did. So,
Yeah.
but if I had just taken the moment to listen to the pot, that wouldn't have happened. And I would have heard that it was bubbling. But instead, I stuck my
Mm.
face toward it, which was the worst thing I could have done.
Yeah, well, now you're an instructor, which is kind of a cool turn on all this, you
Yeah.
know. Did those events inspire you to want to help others? You know, like how did you get into that line of work?
So, my
And what do
background,
you do actually? Because you teach Braille, right?
I do. So, my formal
Yeah.
background was in pre med and pharmacy. I just knew
Okay.
I was going to
So
be.
you're smart.
I wouldn't say that. I had big dreams. How about that?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I knew I was training for a degree in medicine, and I got sick in college, had to leave school, and in the meantime, decided to get a job and was able to use my pre med background to start working at Walgreens in the pharmacy. And I quickly moved my way up. I loved pharmacy, and I was like, hey, I can go into pharmacy as a
Hmm.
pharmacist. And so that was my goal. And that's where I was headed. And in the meantime, I had worked my way up to the district office here in Memphis, hired and trained pharmacy staff in 30 stores in 6 different cities, had my family, and was getting ready to go back to school for finishing up the prereqs so I could apply for pharmacy school when I got sick and lost my sight. And so it was one of those things where when all of this happened, I wanted to be able to take my background and figure out how to help people like myself. It was a long journey going from, hey, Miss Jones, you're blind, to what do I do next and anyone knowing what to do with me. So I literally, it took 3 months. I lost my mind because here I am, this person who was used to getting up and going to the office and running things and being mom and being the breadwinner of my family to sitting on a blanket every day with my daughter, who was 8 weeks old at the time. And that was now my existence was this blanket and talking
Hmm.
to the baby all day because I was blind. No one knew what to do with me. And I didn't want that same situation happening to someone else. So I think it's
Hmm.
really important to talk about blindness services, to get that message out. They're one of the best kept secrets in every state, rehab services. So I am a vision rehab professional here in Memphis. I teach Braille. I teach Apple accessibility and assistive technology. And yeah, I share a lot of these stories of these things that I've done with my students because, yeah, I'm the one that's washed my hair 3 times with the conditioner and never got the shampoo because I couldn't figure out the bottles. But I now know, hey, stick a rubber band on the shampoo, and then the one without the rubber band is the conditioner. So there's all these little
Hmm.
tips and tricks that from my own journey that I share with my students.
Yeah, that's such a good reason to do what you do. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you help a lot of people, and I'm glad to hear that you are helping people.
Mhm.
You said Memphis. I can't help but hear, your Memphis accent. I have a question for you.
Go for it.
Do you think I have a Southern accent at all?
I would not say Southern, um, as in Memphis, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, but like when we were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
beforehand, when you said where you were from, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That explains why I hear what I hear.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious because some people really, they're like, oh, where are you from? You're obviously not from New York.
Yeah.
You sound like you're from the South. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am from the South. And then some people don't hear it at all. And I'll be honest, I kind of like when people say I do sound Southern. I like that I sound Southern. I like the idea of having like a Southern accent.
Well, I like it too. It comes out a lot, especially when I'm relaxed and having fun.
Yeah.
But then again, it's also a great conversation starter.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
also something people will, after I give a speech or something, people will be like, oh, I love listening to you speak. I'm like, including my
Mm-hmm.
Southern accent. They're like, oh, yeah, it was so nice. So I enjoy it. It's one of
Yeah.
those great adjectives that describes something about me.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I had a comment on it because yeah, I really like your accent.
Well, thank you.
But going back, you mentioned, people didn't know what quite to do with you,
Oh, yeah.
at that phase in your life, and you had an an 8-week-year-old daughter, and you're a mother.
Yeah.
What kind of, that's a tough place to be in. You got to provide for your family. How are you? The future is scary to think about, even when you have everything kind of working.
Yep.
What was going on through your mind there, and how did you kind of, get out of that stage?
Well, like you said, it was hard. It was a huge change for my family. I had a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-week-old. Um, so here are my children looking at me. They want a mother. My husband at the time, he wanted a wife. All the things that I used to do, like I said, I was the breadwinner for the family. We were in the middle of buying a house. Here I was, get a week before I was starting school, or the week of starting school, when all of this started. And now everything is gone. And like I said, when I said nobody knew what to do with me, nobody knew what to do with me. Everyone was afraid for me to, I couldn't go in the kitchen. I had to be taken somewhere every day for someone to watch me. I couldn't leave the living room. It was all this stuff, and everything changed. And here I was like, what am I supposed to do? And what really turned the situation around for me was, like I said, I lost my mind. I was like, I can't live like this anymore. There's got to be
Mm-hmm.
something. So we got the phone book out. I had a friend girl get the phone book out and look up the word blind. I thought it was really smart. Um, and we found this place called Blind USA. And we thought, oh, well, this was a facility that would help with rehab. Somebody could teach me something.
Yeah.
Well, it happened to be a window treatment company. It wasn't even dealing with the blind. It had to deal with Venetian blinds and hanging blinds.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, but she had the number for the rehab facility here in Memphis. And so I was able to go through a comprehensive program. And that's what changed things for me. When I learned to thread a needle and I learned to sew on a button, I went home and I sewed every button, even if it was not loose, I was sewing it because it was one thing I could do for my family. And so now I had a purpose, even if it was just to sew on buttons. But it gave me enough confidence to think, okay, I could sew on a button today. What can I do tomorrow? And so then my skills just started to build and build, and I learned how to live independently as a visually impaired person.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's truly is amazing and is inspiring.
Well,
Do
thank you.
you think of yourself? Do you like to think of yourself as inspiring? Is it when if you're a speaker, you're involved in this community? How does it feel when people are now learning from you or hear a story from you and it helps them in their journey?
That's such a funny question because so many times when I'm on podcast or I'm doing things, I have a bit of this celebrity excitement in me because I'm like, these are the people that I was learning from. I was tuning into these podcasts when I first was losing my sight to learn how to do things and listening to who they had on there as
Mm-hmm.
guests. And now I'm the guest. I'm getting to meet some individuals who I have just who have thoroughly helped me along my journey and been able to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was working at a arts and culture camp for children with visual impairments, and we were dealing with a lot of children with some high support needs. And I remember thinking it was kind of overwhelming last month. And as I was walking with one of the children and talking to this child, and this child was nonverbal, I thought, you know what? If this child, knowing a little bit of what I did about the child, if this child had been at home, there would have been no one to talk to her and describe the birds and talk about the sun on our faces and just talk to her and walk with her and talk to her about arcing her cane and just be with her. And I was like, you know what? I am so thankful that my work does get to make an impact. So I am blessed in the fact that people come to me and be like, oh, Miss Stephanie, I listened to your story. Thank you for sharing it. I learned so much. I'm grateful for that opportunity because I do believe that my blindness has a purpose and I want to make sure I share it. So that's why I try and be very open with my blind moments, like popping mashed potatoes in my face from a boiling pot and stepping out into traffic, because I want someone else to be able to learn from that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's inspiring for me, in terms of, talking about as a podcast host, I'm coming at it from a completely different angle. Like, I feel like a lot of podcast hosts are teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm coming at it from a learning perspective because I have RP, and I'm not even considered, legally blind. I have a diminished field of vision. My mom is legally blind. Statistically, most people with my eye condition are considered legally blind by 40. So, I'll be 33 on Thursday. So it's like, I know something's coming up, but I don't really know what.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of started this to kind of learn. And that's one thing I've been surprised by is that, and it kind of makes me feel self-conscious a little bit too, is some people are listening to me and they're learning somehow a lot from the guest I bring on, like yourself, but sometimes they'll even mention stuff I said. And I'm like, well, I'm just really talking about the mental health side of it, or kind of like prepping your mind for something, prepping your mind for vision loss or accepting your vision loss. And what do you think about is the difference between like the mental health side of adjusting to vision loss versus like the physical side where it's learning these very specific skills, learning Braille, learning certain text, screen readers?
And I think what you just said is so powerful, and what you just shared about yourself is so powerful, because there's probably someone out here who might be introduced to your podcast, and the vulnerability sometimes of you, your guests, that speaks more than the technical side of the things that we can teach. Because there might be someone in a very similar situation to yourself with RP that might think, you know what, this person is going through, I'm not alone. So don't ever sell yourself short that you're not teaching just by doing this. I want to make sure I point that out, because I give you props for
I appreciate
just doing that. But now back to your question, because if I get the right answer, I get a car, right? I think that's the deal.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it very much goes
I'll pay
hand
for
in
an Uber.
hand. You've got to address the mental side before I can even start to teach the skill sets. When my students come in and they've had a bad day they knocked over the glass on the table because they didn't know it was there and they didn't see it. They spilt something out of their purse or bag and had to get down on the floor to try and find it. The paratransit bus was late, didn't show up, drove them all around the city when they weren't expecting it. They can't read the mail that just came in, and no one will help them go to the store, or the person who promised that they're going to show up never arrived. You got to deal with all that before I can start saying A is a dot one and B is 1 2 and C is 1 3. I mean 1 4. I've got to deal with that first. And I tell my students, I think because I have this unique perspective of living this life, not just teaching this life. And don't get me wrong, I have met so many sighted individuals who are TBIs, who are rehab professionals that I am thankful for that we have in the field. But there are sometimes I think I offer a different perspective. And so when I tell my students, hey, you can't pull that stuff on me. I know what you're going through because I sat in the same seat that you sat in. And that's the literal truth because we didn't replace the furniture in all these years. But it gives a different perspective. And so I need to allow them to get that stuff out. And sometimes no one has ever asked them, how do you feel about this? We've done the clinical part and we've given a diagnosis and we told them what their options were and we've given them the name to a rehab facility and this is who you need to contact. But we never said, hey, how are you doing? How do you feel about this? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you okay? Are you chill? And you need to be able to express that. So I do think the mental and treating the mental and acknowledging the mental part of it is just as important as learning the skill sets. Because if I don't deal with the mental portion of it, I will never get through the skill sets.
I feel like it never clicked to me that that's true until you just said it. Because I think whenever, the irony of me being a podcaster talking about this topic is I basically try to pretend I didn't have RP for like my entire life until I was like 27 is when I was open to people about it. Cause I was going to quit driving and all these things. So it's like, but I was putting it off. And until I started kind of facing, reality, I am going to lose my vision. And I kind of started talking about it on my podcast, talking with other people about it. And now I'm even planning maybe too far ahead. Like I just had O&M training.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to just get that done with. I wanted to get cane training done with just so I know the basics of a cane. That way when the day comes and I need to use it, I'm not like scrambling or
Yeah.
I'm not like not using a cane for 3 years because I just don't know how to use one. It's like, but the fact is, if I wouldn't have faced RP, if I wouldn't have, started having these conversations I'm having, I would be so behind right now. I wouldn't be the type of person I am right now. I wouldn't have the confidence that I have right now. I wouldn't feel like as less nervous as I feel right now. I feel like, I've talked to so many people who are doing such amazing things, and I know there's a way to do things, just you have to do them differently. And sometimes it's just learning that, processing that. And then now that I've processed it, just like you said, now I'm doing cane training, now I'm like getting deep in the weeds on, everything else. And
because now you're open to it because you've dealt with the hard part of acceptance. And you have to remember that sight loss is a lot of like the grief process. You have to work through those stages and be able, and everyone does do it at their own time. You just can't get bogged down in the stages. And once you get to acceptance, you're good. I think a lot of times we don't realize that blindness and visual impairment it ripples out. It affects our communities. Because think about it. I walk into a store that acts like they've never seen someone who's blind or visually impaired. It could cause a negative impact on me or the store. My friends and family don't know how to deal with me when I first lost my sight. Those things it's a community. There's a ripple effect. It's not just the person with the visual impairment that's also affected. It's everyone else in your path that also has to now deal with this. And that's why things like this podcast and the newsletters that go out, the more we're not afraid to talk about our blindness and visual impairments and be truly open with it, I truly think we're going to make the process better for the person that's going to come behind us. The more we talk about it, people will understand that, hey, blindness is not so misunderstood as I thought. I can adapt to it. I can include someone with blindness or visual impairment in my classroom or in my store or in my business or in my employment, and it's going to be a great experience. But until we start facing that and having those conversations, we've got a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, very well said.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. Great point. Ripple effect.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the anxiety that comes with it, is because you can kind of tell that our diagnosis bothers, or is like, bothers people. You can, you tell them the news. Oh, it's diagnosed with RP. You get a,
Yeah.
you get like a, so,
Yeah.
which is fair. I mean, it's fair. Like, I
It's
get it,
fair.
but it's like, you kind of, it's very rarely like, you know what, that's a tough diagnosis, but we're gonna figure this out and everything's gonna be great. It's
Yeah.
more of, what are the cures? What's your timeline?
What are you going to do?
And then what are you gonna do? And then also, or it's just to ignore it, kind of pretend that it's not real, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's something I've experienced in my family. And, I just think that, imagine, that position you were in, after, there on the blanket, you described it, with your 8-week old daughter. If you had that kind of support around you, it would have been, you would have felt a lot more at ease.
Yeah.
You would have felt a lot more, and it's a lot to put on the individual to basically rely on themselves to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, per se.
Right.
It's up to you, because you're going to be, everyone else misunderstands you. They're kind of, ignorance is bliss to them, in terms of, the less they know, the better, kind of thing. And then, people start to fade away.
Yep.
And some people stay, some people go. And yeah, I just feel like, it's just a grieving process. It's a ripple effect process, like you said. And I was going to ask you, like, in terms of people, because, your blindness was kind of a sudden thing, and you were more in your later years. How did you recognize, is there any advice you would give people who are maybe in the process of losing their vision, or who had just lost their vision, is there anything that you can say to assure the people around you that everything's going to be good? Or is there any like red flags, of things people act like, or actions people do that make you feel like, oh, they're probably not going to stick around, or that's a bad behavior, or, any kind of advice towards, sniffing out any kind of behavior with other people, when you're first diagnosed?
That's this multi-part question. I think one of the first things I would tell someone who might be new to their sight loss is, I lost my sight at 29. Yes, I got to live my life and learn to drive and see my first three children born, and then nothing much after that. And so I would not take my journey back, though. If God came to me and said, "Hey, Stephanie, I will give you back your sight and you can have it, you can do it all over," I would tell him, no, I don't have to have that, because I've had such amazing experiences. Like, even this right here, this is a huge thing to me, to come onto your platform, to come on and be able to speak and have someone hear my story. That's a big thing to me, and I don't take it lightly. So for me, I'm living I didn't go home in a box is normally what I say. And so
Hmm.
I'm going to do everything I'm big and bad enough to do until I take my last breath. I want my children to say, hey, my mom did everything she could, and she did more than a mom who had no reason to not do anything. So I am the PTA mom. I'm the one making breakfast for the teachers. I'm at the bus stop with them. I'm doing everything I can to be mom with my children. So I think some of the other things I would just say is, if you're feeling discernment is this important thing. And if you're feeling like people are starting to pull away from you, it's okay to say, hey, I know you may be uncomfortable with what's going on with me right now. I'm uncomfortable with it. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you being here. But if you need to step back, for a moment until I get it together so I can show you how independent I can be, I can appreciate it. Not everybody is going to be in your life forever. Some
Hmm.
people, I do believe, are only for a season, and some people are to teach you, and that your circle changes, and your circle should evolve. So I know that's probably a hard thing to hear, but that's just the facts of life. And that would be the same thing that even if you were sighted all your life, your circle of friends should be evolving. People may not stay in your life. They may not like what you've gotten into or what you were doing, or your employment or job may pull you away from people in your life, and things change and you lose contact with people. So, and then I guess my other thing I would say is don't tie everything to your blindness. I tell my students all the time, you get the light bill and it's extremely high and you can't pay it. Well, you can't pay it not because you're blind. You can't pay it because everybody can't pay their light bill. It's everyone is going through high prices at the grocery store. It's not because you're blind. People, yes, there are some times when people do walk out of your life because of the blindness and they can't handle it. Um, but that's not the case for everything. It may have been that you outgrew somebody and you're on a different path than where they are. So don't tie everything to your blindness. Make sure that and don't be afraid to talk about it. If you need help, if you need to go and contact a counselor, even if they don't have any experience with dealing with someone who has lost their sight, still there might be some other portions of you that you just need to talk about that can help with the overall journey. So those are the things I would say.
All really great advice and what very well said. Yeah, I strongly recommend people talking to doing therapy or talking to a
Hmm.
counselor.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was talking to past guest, and he mentioned that he gets free therapy from the Lighthouse Guild for the Blind here in New York
Oh,
as
wonderful.
part of their program, and it's covered with the insurance and all that. So
Hmm.
maybe it's something to look up. If you have an organization in your state or city,
Hmm.
maybe see what benefits you can take advantage of. But yeah, and what's cool about that counseling is it's targeted specifically for vision loss.
Yes, yes. And there's some
Yeah.
great programs across the nation that recognize that this is something, like you said, the mental health of the blindness has to be addressed just as much as the physical condition of the blindness.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't see
Mm-hmm.
it enough being addressed, but there are some facilities out there, and just, I mean, no matter what, no matter where you are on your sight loss, there are organizations that there are consumer groups so that you can meet other people like yourself. I do think that that's important. Talking to
Mm-hmm.
people who may have your same condition, may not have your same condition, just so that you learn, hey, how do I tell the shampoo and the conditioner from each other? Put a rubber band on one of them. So, maybe you're passing that trick on to someone before they even get into class. It's sometimes those little things that
Yeah.
come out in a conversation that mean more than a formal lesson.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And I kind of like the idea, of talking, maybe reaching, men, because I think with men, it can be kind of different in the sense like
Yes.
the male ego dealing with blindness, and there's a lot of, societal pressure to, you don't need therapy,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Just kind of do it. Just do it, and sometimes it's like, it's all right if you're a dude and you're struggling mentally processing vision loss or with your disability.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that, and it's natural.
I have a student that waited 25 years before he reached out for any type of services. And in
Exactly. That's 25 years he of
25 years, he gave up.
of being behind,
Yeah.
and 25 years of not trying or learning a cane, and
Yeah.
having the freedom of using the cane,
Being
and all the
dependent
skills that
on
come with
someone
it.
else,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
25 years. Who knows what he could have done? But
Yeah.
everybody's a little different. So I think you're right. Sometimes we're ashamed of it. I think me learning about disabilities and their role through history helped me a lot have a good perspective on that. Even though disabilities means without abilities, I still have abilities. Mine are just different from yours. And they should be. We're two different people. And when you start to look at it that way, I think, and when you understand how society has treated individuals with disabilities, and understand that blindness is still one of those disabilities that is very unknown, and we fear what we don't know as a community. And so I walk into somewhere, I say, "Hey, I'm blind," or they see the white cane, and then it's an automatic, I don't know about this. But how I present myself, if I'm confident, if I've got good cane skills, if I understand my technology and I can present myself well, then that helps ease a lot of the fear. So a lot of it has to do with how I feel about myself and my confidence level.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think
Yeah.
just, I think your advice is definitely great and universal. It's great for anyone, and I think if I want to make it more specific, tailored to men, I would say masculinity is trying. Masculinity is the effort you put forth.
Yes.
And it's just, it's all right to use a cane. There's nothing, feminine or, it's just sometimes we, you want to be the provider, you want to be the protector, and then if you're visually impaired or blind, you're like, well, if somebody came up to me, in the street, maybe I wouldn't be as effective at protecting, my family as, a sighted man would be. And now all your self-worth is put on that idea of a made up scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Like that made up scenario could happen, but
It could.
there's a quote that I like where it's like you suffer more in your imagination than you do in reality.
Oh, that is so true.
You know.
That's so true. But I try and take my suffering a little bit. I try and find an end to it. So I've always told my children,
Yeah.
if someone breaks in our house, I'm turning into Kevin Costner from The Bodyguard, because there's that scene where they're exchanging the bullets and something flies up, the snow flies up and hits him in his eyes, and he's blinded. He cannot see.
Yeah.
He drops to his knees and he paid attention to the sounds, and he got his mark. And so when it means to protecting my family, that's what I'm going to do. I tell my children, this is the one time in your life I need you to be quiet. For the rest of the time, they're not quiet. But so I try and take my suffering a little bit further and have a plan afterwards.
Yeah. I made a joke, but I was kind of being serious with it to my wife. I said, I want you. Well, I said, we ever leave New York City and we're more like a rural area. I was like, I'm going to take you to get training with a pistol and you're going to get good with it. And that way you can be the person with the gun. And she was like, I don't know. I like that. And I'm just like, hey, think about it.
Well,
But,
I think it's important. There have been some great programs I've been made aware of about self-defense for those with blindness and visual impairments. Even when my children were small, when I first lost my sight, we put them in karate, and the instructors they asked me a lot of questions about my own blindness. And the gentleman told me once, he's like, when you're ready, I'm going to show you how to use a cane as part of your self-defense. And,
Mm.
and so I have been shown some things, and there's no reason that as a blind and visually impaired person that I can't be aware of my surroundings. I should be that anyway, whether I have a disability or not. I need to always be aware of my surroundings.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that means, hey, stop voiceover from talking. Don't always be on the screen reader when you're walking down the street. Keep one ear open. I always usually only use one earbud so I can listen with the other ear. And then
Hmm.
there are some things I have been shown just by different instructors over the years about self-defense. But I probably would have learned those too just being a woman, just living in Memphis, just being a mother. So
Yeah.
again, not just because I'm blind. I just happen to have been taught these things as a person with blindness or visual impairment, but I probably still would have learned them just as a person. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-defense. Maybe
Hmm.
I should explore that. Maybe bring on a self-defense instructor. That'd be cool to talk to someone like that.
There are several judo artists, several
Yeah.
taekwondo artists, masters who just also happen to be blind, who have black belts, who
Yeah.
are doing amazing things. There are self-defense programs created for the blind and visually impaired. So these things are possible. It just depends upon what you're going to get up off the couch and do.
Yeah. I agree.
So yeah,
Um, I'll consider that. Maybe if I find the right person that's the right fit, I'll have that conversation.
there you go.
I want to switch over, because we're 40 minutes in. I wanted to switch over to your app, the app you're affiliated with and a part of,
Yes,
and have been promoting. And it's a great app, Menus for All.
yes.
You talk about helping others. This is another way that you are helping others. Can you talk a little bit about what Menus for All is and kind of your how you are a part of it?
So menus for all, it is so amazing to be part of something where you know that
Yeah, your face lit up when I said Menus for All. Your face just lit up.
I love talking about menus for all. So that's a dangerous thing. So the
Yeah,
story of it is my co-owner Helen Fernetti was studying. She is an accessibility SME for Fortune 100s. And when she was studying accessibility and learning it, she wanted to know about the people who were going to be using what she's creating. So she started volunteering at World Services for the Blind in Little Rock, Arkansas. And a lot of times those sessions ended with, hey, you want to go to lunch? You want to go to dinner? So she took this individual out. Here was this entrepreneur, well-educated gentleman, and get to the restaurant. And someone has to read him the restaurant menu just for him to pick what he wants for lunch. And Helen looked at the situation and thought, I bet you technology has a solution for this. So she started creating some prototypes, introducing them to individuals she met, and then she got transferred to Memphis. And one afternoon, she ended up calling where I worked and talking to me about this menu idea. And I had been talking to my students about how to read a restaurant menu because we don't understand, I think, as a whole in the community, how much lack of access affects somebody. We go out to a restaurant for
yeah,
social activities. We go out to a restaurant for business meetings. We go out to a restaurant just to chill, to end a bad day, to celebrate. What happens when you can't fully engage in that activity? Or the first 10 minutes at the table, someone's got to read you the menu. And who's going to read you the entire menu?
yeah. Don't go to the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh my gosh, their menu is massive. And
Yeah,
at the same time, I personally don't want my disability to be the first part of the conversation. I don't want
yeah.
that. I want to be on equal playing field with my peers and I want to be mom to my children. So
And it slows you down.
it does. And
That's the
then
main
that
thing. Is just slows you down.
it affects that mental confidence. You're like, I can't even do this.
Yeah.
So it's going back to that mental health that you just were talking about. And I know no one thinks of it like that, but it truly is. When Helen and I have talked to people about what does it feel like not to have access? What does it feel like to not know what the price is of the food that you just ordered and you get a surprise at the end of the night? What does it feel like when you're on a first date and everything's
Yeah.
already uncomfortable and now you got to throw this into the mix? What does it feel like when you're tired of eating Caesar salad, chicken Alfredo, and French fries? And you probably might eat something different if you just knew it was there. So
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my students about how to do these things. And that here comes Helen calling and saying, "Hey, I've got this idea to make menus accessible." I'm like, "Yeah, right, whatever. I've heard this for years, but no one had ever come up with anything." So she came to demonstrate it. And at the end of the meal, I looked at her. I said, "Whatever I have to do to make this happen." And so we've been business partners and friends. And see, again, that's where I've gotten blessed. Here I am
Mm-hmm.
helping with this, but I've gotten a great friendship out of it.
Yeah.
We've had long car rides, going to conferences. We've had lots of late nights and family time and stuff like that. So it's this wonderful experience. So the menu we launched as a website in 2019. We had 50,000 accessible restaurant menus on our website in 12,000 cities across the United States. We thought we were really doing it. And people kept saying, "This would be great as an app. This would be great as an app." And so one day
Mm-hmm.
Helen and I said, "Oh, this would be really great as an app." And so we started working on making it an app. And we thought, what if we could offer more than 50,000? So when we launched in November, we launched with 750,000 restaurant menus across the United States and Canada. And then, so here we are, and we've reached now a little over 1 million accessible menus. And that's
Wow.
throughout the two countries. And we're just wanting to keep going. We're wanting to try and figure out how to offer more menus, how to offer more places, how to offer it to more people. So that's what we're trying to do, one menu at a time. And we've loved the feedback, good, bad, and ugly, because even ugly feedback, someone says, "Oh, I don't like it because I don't like the way it's set up, or I don't like the restaurant offerings in my area." That means that we want to work that much harder to find restaurants in that area that we can offer. Um,
Yeah.
or I've heard people talk about, one of my favorites was this gentleman. I was having an extremely bad day, and I opened up my email, and he tells me, "Thank you for this app because I'm going to be able to take my wife out for the first time by myself to a restaurant for our 50th anniversary." And
Wow.
originally he was like, "Well, I probably won't use this app much." And then he got all excited about the anniversary. And I thought, that's a moment. That,
Mm-hmm.
and I hung my head and I thought, okay, this is why Helen and I have long nights sometimes and um, constantly trying to figure out how we can make it better so that someone can have that moment right there. So, yeah. So, yeah, I light up when I get to talk about menus raw.
Yeah, you definitely do.
And,
Um,
and then I've loved it. I love having access to the menu and no one has to read it to me. And I can
mhm.
probably look at a menu faster than a sighted person because of the way the app is structured.
Oh yeah.
Um, I've just been on the road for 2 weeks for work and gone through multiple states. And I have been in little bitty towns that I thought, oh no, we won't have a menu here. Ordered my own stuff at a huddle house outside 100 miles outside of Nashville and somewhere I had never even heard of here in Tennessee. I've been in Washington, D.C. on my daughter's choir trip, Florida, all over. And I just light up. I've been in mom and pops and I've been in five-star restaurants. I've been with colleagues, I've been by myself, and I just like having access. So, yep.
Yeah, I looked it up because I have the app on my phone. I looked it up. There's 135 menus just in my
Immediate
My
vicinity.
little immediate vicinity. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of New York City is like there's so many restaurants everywhere.
At first, we had a limit on 100 within a 20-mile radius. In areas
Yeah.
like New York City, within 20 miles, you've hit thousands of restaurants.
Yeah,
So
there's I mean there's
now,
so many.
now you can kind of go through some pages of them and it'll keep
Yeah.
loading. So we took that 100 cap off, but then that way in little towns where maybe there's not so many, you might see the distances go out, 5 miles down the street that you have
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
accessible menu. So yeah. So we try to
Yeah,
be very
definitely.
deliberate in that.
Yeah, and it also shares other helpful information like the address, the hours. So
Yep.
it's all helpful. And I guess if you wanted to even plan ahead, you could find menus and read them ahead of time and then pick places based off of that, you know?
So I am planning a trip to New York at the end of the month. And of course, when I get some downtime, I'm going to plug in the address of my hotel under the search page under
Mm-hmm.
location. And that's kind of like a trick. We started out where you could add you could do the zip code, the postal code, the province, the city,
Yeah.
state things. But if you drop in the address, it'll find out what's near the address. So I
Mm.
will drop in my hotel address and I like just seeing what even is around.
Yeah, there
Then
you
I
go.
can bookmark what I saw. So when I land at
Mm-hmm.
JFK, I'm ready to eat. I don't have to worry about looking for it. I've already done my homework.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you're saying you bookmark it. You
hmm
meaning like you can favorite the
I
menu and
can
then kind of
favorite
find it
and then
later.
go
Yeah.
back and look at it in the favorites tab. And they're alphabetized in the favorites tab so that I can easily go back and
Yeah.
find them. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's smart and neat. You know, you get and it's fun. Like I do that sometimes if I know where I'm going to be eating, I will look up the menu and kind
Yep.
of daydream about, maybe I want this, maybe I want that,
Right.
or
Because
maybe I get both.
I like the way you think. And
Yeah.
sometimes find out that I'm not in the mood for what I thought I was. I'm a seafood person. So
Okay.
usually I'm going straight for the shrimp and fish, right? I have found out
Yeah.
recently that there are times when I don't want the shrimp offering. That maybe I want the ribs, or maybe I want, the prime rib or something. So I find myself eating foods that I normally would not have eaten because the description of the item as I was going through the menu just grabbed me and I couldn't let it
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Definitely.
So
So what
yeah.
you're saying is it makes you even more knowledge is power, the classic
Yes.
phrase, and now it's now knowledge is helping you try new foods, find new favorite dishes.
Yeah, and it's a
You know,
great way to start. When we sit down at the table and I
yeah,
just get to look through it because part of the table experience is a conversation where everyone's looking at the menu and be like, "Oh, did you see the quesadillas? Oh,
yeah,
look at the
yeah.
salad.
That's
Oh, that
true.
buffalo salad. That one sounded good. Oh, I didn't really like the chop
Yeah.
suey this time." Right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Well, I can now follow along with that
Yeah.
because I can see the same things that they're saying, even though I don't see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. There's a lot of banter at the table. It's like,
hmm
oh, what are you gonna get? You know, I don't know. I'm eyeing that, you know, double cheeseburger with the candied bacon or whatever it is, and,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, that looks good. What page is that on? And then you're like, oh, I didn't see that. What side are you gonna get? You know, that is a lot of the
hmm
conversations at the table.
Yep.
Or if they're like, what like, hey, you want to get an appetizer? And then if you don't have like an accessible menu, you're kind of like, just kind of sitting there as everyone else picks. And then
Yep.
maybe you can chime in if you hear something, But now it's like, it's just good to be a part of the discussion.
hmm
And,
It
and
is.
everyone likes talking food.
I was gonna say we should have warned everyone at the beginning, that you will probably want to run and get something to eat after this. You might be hungry after this
Oh, yeah.
conversation.
I'm always hungry.
I am too. I love
Yeah.
food. And this just makes me realize how much I love food. I've lived in my house for 7 years. I opened the app, and there are places around my home that I have never heard of, and that now I have tried because I didn't know it was point 0.3 from my house, and they have really good wings. And okay, this works. And so I love that part that I'm learning something new, or what I'm going to see at my home is very different than what I'm going to see on the other side of the other side of the city if I go to the mall. I love finding menus in places I didn't expect, like at the mall,
Yeah.
the food court. I mean, that's always been a nightmare for me, trying to figure out what was there. Um,
Yeah.
and because the menu is up on a board somewhere. So
True. Yeah.
now I'm going to places, and now I get to choose to put my money where I have an accessible menu. I can make that choice for
Your money where
myself.
your mouth is.
Yep. Yep. So now
Yeah.
I'm putting my money in a business that is giving me access. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I like
And
doing
it's
that.
putting food in your mouth.
It is, which is a great thing.
Yeah. You know, a great point I want to bring up that I think is an interesting question is, this problem, was identified as, a real life situation, sparked an idea, had a light bulb moment.
Mm-hmm.
Your business partner at the dinner with her entrepreneur friend, he
Yep.
he had to have someone read the menu to him. That's a real life situation that needs a real life solution.
Mm-hmm.
This is a solution.
Yeah.
And do you think that the blind community has to take matters into their own hands and kind of create the technology they need, create the apps that they need? Should the disability or blind community, is it up to us to kind of take these things and kind of make them happen, or should we? Because I feel like a lot of the time there's almost like an expectation that someone else is going to do it for us.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're like, just do it yourself. What do you think?
I think you keep hitting on this mental health thing, because I shouldn't feel as a person that I've got to wait for someone else to find the answer for me. There is nothing wrong with me being part of the solution. Now, can
Yeah.
I personally build an app? No, but I'm connected with someone who is a UX designer and understands accessibility. And between the two of us, I'm the people side, she's the tech side. It's a nice blend of our skills and talents. And so I get to help take my experiences to drive something. So I think, again, that goes back to the importance of us being vulnerable and sharing. There's nothing wrong with going to a company and saying, hey, your website is not where I could use it, and I use a screen reader, or I use a Braille display, and I would like to visit your business. I'd like to shop on your site, but I'm unable to do it right now. And the person be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Can I show you how it works on another site? I think you get a lot more flies when you're using honey instead of vinegar, so to speak. So it's not, and I don't think people naturally want to not include the blind and visually impaired.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that unknown factor. And so who better to talk about the unknown factor and teach the unknown factor than someone who's like myself, someone who's living
exactly.
it and it affects.
I
And
agree.
I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I never thought of that. Well, let me figure this out. And then the next thing you know, we have an app that provides restaurant menus. We get other bits of technology. So I think it's important that we are part of the process.
Yeah, I agree completely. But
Yeah.
I think I just want to encourage anyone out there, don't just expect, everything to happen. If sometimes you can just, you have a good idea, go for it,
And I think to further that point, this is something that I too struggled with when I first was downloading apps to my devices. I never wanted to pay for an app because I was like, oh, they got to be free. There are a lot of great apps out there that have been created specifically for the blind and visually impaired and not specifically, that I have paid for because they helped me be independent.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, what with Menus for All, we are a subscription-based app. So it is $2.99 USD monthly, or it's $29.99 for the annual subscription USD. And that gives you 2 months free. And we've had people say, "Oh my gosh, I would pay more than $2.99 a month for that." We love that. We're great. Trust me.
Yeah.
We have never wanted to gorge people. Never wanted, this is not our get rich quick scheme. We want to provide
Yeah.
people access and have a healthy business all at the same time. But I've also had people say, "How dare you charge a blind person for a menu?" Well, we're not charging you for a menu. We've created a platform, much less like Netflix or Hulu or
Yeah.
Disney Plus, like other platforms. We're in this platform related society. And that access to the platform of this carefully cultured collection costs something, right? And that's how
Yeah.
Menus for All is. We're a platform that provides access to these unique benefits of being able to find restaurant menus just by opening up the app near your current location, being able to search for them, being able to bookmark them. Those are things that we added to the app to make it provide benefit. And I've heard people talk about, "Oh, well, apps for the blind can't cost anything. They should be free." Well, my independence is worth a whole lot more than not having it. So I love my independence. I love being able to be independent and do everything I think I'm big and bad enough to do. And if it means, for me, I made the choice that, hey, some of these things I can pay for, and I choose to pay for because they better me. So,
And there's a free trial period.
there is, because we want you to get in there and get hooked and look at all the
Yeah.
menus, think about all the places you can go. I love looking at menus in Canada. I've never been to Canada, but I'm like, I already know what I'd
Exactly.
eat, and I hadn't even made it there yet. But I just like looking at the different things. I like food, so I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend everyone, I have a link in the show description, but also you can just easily type in, Menus for All in the App Store of your phone, whether it's Apple or Android. You're across the board. You can be found everywhere.
No, we are only at this point an iOS app.
iOS
And
app,
so
okay.
we are working. I know people are like, "Well, when are you going to do, Andrew?" We're working on it. I promise you, we're working on it. We're having conversations. We're trying to get it done. Can I tell you when? No, I cannot. I wish I could. We'd love to be in other countries. So these are things that Helen and I are constantly trying to figure out a way that we want to do. We want, 1 million's
Yeah.
nice, but what if we had a couple of million? What
Yeah.
if we were in multiple countries? These are things that we want. And so when you're searching for it, also remember that it's menus and then the number 4. So menus,
Yeah.
the number 4, ALL.
Yeah, and I'll have a link in the description. If you just want to click that, it'll make it easy for you.
There you go.
I recommend everyone try it out. And, on your point about, charging for something, it's hard, because the reality is you'd want to give it for free,
Yeah.
but there's cost that come with
yes.
running an app, hiring people to make the app, keeping the app functionable, business meetings where you're talking to people about making the app have a wider reach. Like
Yes.
everything has a cost, even this podcast, it's like, I have to buy the equipment. I have to spend a lot of time editing, and I'm at such a small phase where I don't really get much, I don't make any money off of this podcast. I don't make really any money on it. I had a Patreon. I believe you were a subscriber.
Yes.
And
We've known you for a long time, or Helen's
Yeah.
been communicating with you for a long time. So this is an awesome thing for the two of us to be on your podcast. But you're right. It's so
but even
I didn't
sorry,
even know how expensive all this was.
it's very expensive, and I think
Yeah.
people should cut some slack because it's all for the greater good, and it's unfortunate. If these larger companies, these larger corporations want to step in, they have so much income that they probably could provide it for free, but that's not, we're obviously not there yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like we're independent, we're small scale operations trying to have a national, international footprint, and we're doing it all on our own. So I would recommend everyone to support these smaller businesses, support these smaller podcasts, because without your support, it's hard to compete with these huge competitors who have billions of dollars, or, et cetera, et cetera. So I relate to you there.
Yep. And at the same time, even getting in the doors, Helen and I have been able to talk to some of those pretty big companies.
Yeah.
And then we'll give the whole presentation, and I've told my story, I've demonstrated how I use technology in the screen reader. And then someone will say, I'm just not sure a blind person can use a smartphone. But I just showed you. And,
that's the disconnect.
But there's that disconnect. So again, that's why things like this are so important, because the more we're a little vulnerable, and I think that's my word for the month. And, the more I can open up, you open up, someone else opens up, and we just talk about these things and not be afraid to do it. And we say at the end of it, hey, it's okay. Ask me a question. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'd rather you ask me because I have the tough skin. Now, don't rush out and go ask blind people every question you ever have. Some of them might hit you. But I'll normally swallow it and answer.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to that point about just, if you have an idea, just do it,
Yeah.
And then that can be your proof of concept, and then maybe, it will be picked up, and it will grow to the size you imagine it to be. But don't be afraid to start small. Yeah.
You choked me up.
Don't be afraid to start small is all I'm saying, and it can grow and grow and grow. And so, I recommend everyone check out Menus for All. That's Menus number 4 all. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to Menus for All that, people should be aware of?
Try it. Reach out to me if you have questions at Stephanie. Sorry, I guess all the
You're
talking.
fine.
See, this has been great.
Yeah.
Reach out to me at Stephanie at Menus for All. We love hearing from our people. Usually I don't lose my voice after talking about it for so long, but that's okay, because it's a good thing to lose my voice over. But try the app. Let us know how you feel about it. And, hey, maybe one of these times when I'm in your area, I can meet you for a meal and we'll go from there. How about that?
Boom.
There you
definitely go check it out. And but I really enjoyed hearing from you. I could have asked you, on that note of asking a bunch of questions, I could ask you a ton of questions. But maybe that'll be for another conversation we'll have.
Yeah.
But I think you provided a lot of valuable answers, and your story, your personal story is very inspirational, very motivational. And I think if, you can get out of that mindset that you were in when you were, holding your 8-week-old daughter on a blanket facing vision loss, that what more proof does anyone else need to hear that, you can change your environment, but you got to be proactive, and you got to have faith in yourself first,
Yes. You are your own disability. The limitations we put on ourselves, that's our disability.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. And but I just find that so motivational, and I think your story is going to resonate with anyone who listens to this episode. So I just want to say thank you for your time. I'm very appreciative of your time. I'm very appreciative for what you're doing with Menus for All. Again, I'll have the link in the description. Download it. I'll have your social media in the show description as well. You can connect with Stephanie there. She's very friendly. She'll talk to you. So give her a follow. And I think that wraps up this episode. I think that's a good way to wrap this episode up. I wish you the best with Menus for All, and I'm glad we can connect.
Thank you so much, Lance. This has been awesome.
Yeah, take care.
You as well.
Bye.